Welcome to English Speaking Made Easy. We have been airing a few episodes of this program, and now we decided that based on your positive response to actually revamp the show into giving you a lot more information, making the segments a little more easier for you to be able to understand. So, in this new edition of English Speaking Made Easy, we have divided the segments into 4. We will begin with a bit of grammar, and we call it the Grammar Express. So, after we give you a little bit of information on grammar, we slowly move on to vocabulary, and this is one area which most people appreciate the most. So, we have a little bit on vocabulary. This is followed by pronunciation. Okay, this is a major problem area. So, we tackle the problems you can have with pronunciation, and we end it up with what we call conversation or let's talk. So, these are going to be the 4 sections that based on which our program has been tailored. Okay. So, we hope you will enjoy the new revamped edition of the show. So, let us begin with the Grammar Express. Now, whenever we begin to learn grammar, whether we start it off at school, I am sure we all realize that the very first thing that we learn is what we call nouns. Okay? Now, nouns, I do not think it needs a special definition because we all are familiar with nouns. So, I will not be going into a lot of details there. What we are going to do is going to give you a very basic introduction to what nouns are. Nouns name people, places, animals and things. This is the most basic definition. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ആൾക്കാരുടെ പേരുകൾ, സ്ഥലങ്ങളുടെ പേരുകൾ, ആനിമൽസിൻ്റെ പേരുകളൊക്കെ പറയുമ്പോൾ we use nouns. Okay? Now, if I give you a few sentences, I am sure you would be able to identify the nouns here. So, let us go to the sentences here. The very first sentence, Sheila lives in Dubai. Okay? In this sentence, can you identify the nouns? Okay? There are 2 prominent nouns here. One is Sheila and the other is Dubai. So, Sheila stands for the name of a person, Dubai stands for the name of a place. Okay? The next sentence, dogs love meat. Have you identified the nouns here? Yes, you have dogs and you have meat. The third sentence, Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. This sentence also you may have seen Mount Everest is a noun, mountain is a noun, world is also a noun. Okay? Have a look at the 4th sentence too. Pugs are delightful dogs. So, I am sure you agree with me that and now you are able to identify the nouns better, pugs and dogs. This was a simple part because all those words in all the sentences I gave you previously, the sentences had nouns relating to places, people, things and names. So, it was quite easy for you to identify them. Now, when we have these sentences, we also have another category coming in, and this is very important. See, our program is not just aimed at speaking alone, it also helps you correct a lot of usage errors you could make. For students, for professionals who need to work on their writing, you need to be able to understand the difference between common nouns and proper nouns. And why do you need to know about them? The first reason why you need to distinguish between these 2 kinds of nouns is primarily because when you are writing, a proper noun always takes a capital letter, whereas a common noun does not. So, you need to understand which are common nouns and which are proper nouns. If you go back to the examples that we had done a little before, you will see that there are many common nouns and there are many proper nouns. Okay? So, if you take a sentence like pugs are delightful dogs. You saw pugs, that is the name of a kind of dog. So, the P in the pug is always in capital. It is a proper noun. A proper noun does not stand for something general, it stands for a specific name, the kind of a dog, that is a pug. So, pugs are delightful dogs, but look at the word dog. We do not use a capital there for dog. The D is not capitalized because dogs refer to a general species. Okay, so there are many kinds of dogs, of which one kind of a breed is a pug. So, pug takes a capital P while dog does not. Okay, and many other sentences. Now, if you look at another sentence, Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. You saw that we capitalized Mount Everest. M was capitalized because it is the name of a mountain. It names something, it is a proper noun. But when the next time when we use mountain, we did not use a capital because there mountain referred to something, it was not a name, it was a general thing. So, when you are speaking about something in general, we use a common noun and we do not capitalize common nouns. On the other hand, when we use a proper noun, the first letter is always capitalized. So, when you write, always remember names of people, the first letter will be in capital. The same applies for names of places, towns, names of breeds, names of movies, all that. When it's named something, we need to begin those words with a capital. Not doing that is a very big error in basic punctuation, and this is something we learn when we are very young in school. But even now when we do our corrections for essays and all that, we find lots of students making errors in this regard. Now, let us go on to look at a few other sentences. Okay? The very first sentence is, freedom is considered very important these days. Just have a look at that sentence. In that sentence, freedom is considered very important these days. Do you see any noun that does not fit into the description of a noun that I gave you before? ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞിരുന്നല്ലോ, noun names of denotes names, denotes people, denotes places and denotes things. ഈ 4 കാറ്റഗറി പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഞാൻ പറയാതെ വിട്ടുപോയ ഒരു കാറ്റഗറിയിൽ പെട്ട നൗണിനെ കുറിച്ച് നമ്മൾ ഇപ്പോൾ പറയുന്നത്. അത് ഈ സെൻറ്റൻസ് നോക്കുമ്പോൾ യു വിൽ റിയലൈസ് ദ സെൻറ്റൻസ് ഇസ് freedom is considered very important these days. Here, if I do not know how many of you have identified, but there is one word which is a noun, but which does not fit into the 4 categories I mentioned before, and that word is what we call freedom. Yes, freedom is also a noun. It does not perhaps answer a name, a place, a thing or a person, but it is still a noun. Okay, freedom is a noun. Now, let us look at the next sentence. Okay, in the next sentence we have, many people live in poverty. So, just like people, poverty is a noun and poverty is similar. That nature of the noun is similar to freedom. Look at the next question, the next sentence. Communication between parents and children have reduced these days. Communication is also a noun. So, then my question is, what kinds of nouns are these? They are what we call abstract nouns. These nouns reflect feelings, they show you feelings and ideas. So, these are also nouns and they are often called abstract nouns. The problem is when we look at it in a very narrow way as just being name, place, animal and thing, most of us forget that there is another kind of a noun called an abstract noun. Okay? So, these words like the words I mentioned before, poverty, freedom, communication, all these are words and they also fit into the description of nouns. So, we will have to bring in another addition to the definition. It also expresses what we call emotions and our feelings too. Okay. So, the reason I told you this is to make you understand that There is another area of nouns which we often, sometimes you see it in a sentence and you don't identify it as a noun. They are what we call intangible things. You can't touch freedom, you can't touch communication, but of course you can perhaps touch a place, you can be in a place, they are very tangible. But these things are what we call intangible. They express our feelings and emotions, and they are called abstract nouns. And they are the opposite of what we call concrete nouns. Now, concrete nouns, as the name suggests, is something which we can actually touch. A table, a pen, a car, you can touch and feel them, but you can't touch poverty, you can't touch communication. So, that is the difference between an abstract noun and a concrete noun. Okay? So, with this we come to an end of our first small bit on the basics of nouns. Okay? Now, let us go on to something that was very interesting. It is called lexica. Lexica is your guide to good vocabulary. We all know that vocabulary is one area which is very, very difficult for most students. When they speak, they always feel that fluency is hampered because they don't get the right words. This is what we hear all the time when we make students speak. So, we feel it is very, very important that we equip you with the right kind of vocabulary to express your ideas. Okay? So, today the words I have decided to cover are, it's a very general category of words, which is, these are words that we use every day. They are words that are used to describe taste. Okay? So, first I am going to give you those basic words that you would need to describe taste. The first word is sour. Now, sour, the word is familiar to most of us. It is just that we may go wrong with the pronunciation. It is not sour, it is sour, which means puli. It is sour. You have something, it is sour. And then you have bitter. We say Skype, you have a medicine, it is bitter. Then of course, if something is very sweet, we say it is sugary. Now, what about potato chips that have been freshly fried in oil? They are crispy and they are crunchy, and that is the word we use. It is crispy and crunchy. Okay? Then like that, have you ever thought when you open a nice pot of dum biryani, you have a lovely smell coming from it, and it's called, we say it's so aromatic. And Indian food is always aromatic because we've got so many spices in it. So, we say aromatic. Aroma means smell. So, when a food smells good, we say, it's so aromatic. Then of course, we have those simple words like spicy, salty and hot. Hot is often used both with heat, I mean a food is piping hot, or it can also mean when it's very spicy, it's got lots of chilies in it. So, we say it's very hot. Okay? And spicy, of course, when the food, spicy and hot are often used together. These basic words I am sure are quite familiar for you. The words sour, bitter, sugary, salty, crispy. Now, today I am going to introduce 3 different words, 3 new words that you could perhaps use when you have to describe food. Okay? And the first word, and just pay attention to these words, make note of them if you wish, because these are words you will definitely have to use when you speak and when you write. The first word is a very interesting word. It is rancid. Okay? R-A-N-C-I-D. Now, where do we use this word rancid? Now, just imagine if you bought a packet of milk, you forgot to take it, it was lying in the refrigerator for about 3 to 4 days, and later when you try to open it, it has a very bad smell, it smells bad. And when dairy products and all, and meat and dairy products, when they all smell bad, which means it has now become, it is spoilt, it has gone bad, then we say, oh, it's rancid. The meaning is when you have an unpleasant smell as a result of something having been, being old and stale, we refer to it as being rancid. Okay? So, we would say something like, I think the milk has gone rancid. it's been 3 days since I bought the milk. It has gone rancid, which means it smells bad. Okay. Now, mainly dairy products and all that, we often use this particular word. Now, what is interesting is this is how words are used in other contexts too. So, typically though this is the meaning of the word rancid, it would be of interest to let you know that rancid is sometimes even used to describe personality. You have some very nasty people and you say, oh my God, he has a very rancid personality. So, just that negative thing about the food is now slowly taken into mean to refer to a person. When someone is really bad mannered, he doesn't have a good behavior, we refer to him as having a very rancid personality. Okay. And the rancid itself is taken from the Latin word which means to stink, to have a bad smell. The word is derived from Latin. So, we speak about, so we can use this word rancid, one for food that has gone bad and which smells bad. We can use rancid to refer to people whose personalities are very negative, who are very bad tempered, a bad person. In a negative way, we can say, oh, he's got such a rancid personality. We can also use rancid with behavior. You're very harsh, you're very arrogant, his rancid behavior put me off. So, you see a word which can be used in 3 contexts: food, personality and behavior. And I am sure that is a very nice word you can definitely use in your conversations. Another word that we have is the word bland, and I always keep emphasizing on this word. This word bland means when something does not have a strong flavor. Now, look at our food. Our Indian cuisine is never bland. We have a splash of spices. It's hot and spicy. We never refer to our cuisine as being bland. But have you seen, for us Indians, when we travel abroad, we can never savor their food, and that is primarily because the food there does not have as much spices as we do. They would just have a sprinkling of salt and pepper. And because of that, we say the food is rather bland. Bland means when food does not have a strong taste. It's very mildly flavored. So, for us Indians, continental food is definitely bland. Okay. So, the word is bland. So, you can give a sentence like this: continental food is relatively bland when compared to Indian food. So, this word bland is derived from the Latin word blandis. Okay. So, I gave you the word bland, B-L-A-N-D, and I told you what it means. We refer to bland in terms of the food we eat, in terms of taste. Now, just like the previous word we discussed, we can also use bland in many other contexts. One context we use this word bland is when, just imagine reading a book. The book is very uninteresting. So, you see that such a novel is so bland. Similarly, when you have movies, some movies and all may not have any action. It might be going in a very sluggish, very slow pace, and you would say, oh, it was a very bland movie. So, bland can be used to mean not interesting in many contexts. Okay? So, there can be bland movies, bland books, we are not showing much emotion. So, we use that word in that context also. Okay. So, I covered rancid for you and I covered bland. The third word is the word that we kind of use, a little informal word, but we see it in a lot of food, in reviews of food and all that, and the word is gooey. This describes food which is wet and sticky, like when you have a dollop of chocolate over let us say over ice cream, the chocolate is gooey, and it is always used in a positive way. Okay. Benny likes gooey fudge on top of his ice cream. So, gooey means something which is wet and sticky. So, that is also something related to the texture of food. Okay. So, in this section of lexica, I hope you have been able to take in the 3 words that we covered, the 3 prominent words that I introduced to you. They were rancid, bland and gooey, G-O-O-E-Y. That is about the segment we had, which is lexica. Okay. Now, the third segment that we are going on to is what we call is a segment on pronunciation. We call it Say It Right. point of this particular segment is to make sure that you correct those tiny bits of problems you have with pronunciation. Now here what I am going to deal with is, in most words, this is a very basic area of pronunciation, but something which is very important when you speak. Because if you see a word, that is, look at the word, it has a pronoun I and it has will. So when we write formally, we would say I will come tomorrow, and that's perfectly fine. But when you speak, we don't usually in connected speech put those words separately. We kind of combine them. I and will are not said I will come tomorrow, because when you say that, what can happen is it can have an impact on what we say, on the flow of how you are expressing that idea. On the other hand, if you combine those two words, you get what we call a contraction. It's a combination of both those words. So I plus will be I'll. I plus will. So in a sentence, I will come tomorrow. When you are contracting I plus will, we say I'll come tomorrow. Okay, I'll come tomorrow. That's how we pronounce that word. Similarly, the same thing can be when we say she plus will. We say she'll come tomorrow. He plus will, it is he'll come tomorrow. So it's not he will. In connected speech we say he'll come tomorrow, she'll come tomorrow. They plus will, they'll. This is more relevant when you're speaking. You would say they'll come tomorrow. That's what they said. So we don't say they will come tomorrow. It affects the rhythm of connected speech. Another contraction that we have is he'd. It is a combination of he plus would. When we say it together, it is he'd. Okay. The next word, might plus have. Look at the word. If you see it on the screen, it is might apostrophe ve. When you say it together as a contraction, it is he might have. He might have come. He might have. We don't say he might have. When you put it together, it is might have. Might have. And then look at the other word, would plus not, wouldn't. The contraction is wouldn't. Would plus not, wouldn't. Okay. They plus have, they've. They plus have, it is they've. The same applies for we plus have, we've. We've done our homework. That is the contraction for the elongated sentence, we have done our homework. When you use a contraction, we say we've done our homework, and that's so much more easier. So this is how we use contractions, and remember, you need to know how to pronounce them properly in order to be able to use them when you speak. So that is very, very important. The final segment for this today's program is our basic conversation segment, and we've titled it Let's Talk. Okay. So now I welcome you to this final segment, which is Let's Talk. In Let's Talk, we have actually trying to help you with building your conversation. Okay. When we meet people, we use a lot of informal and formal expressions to greet them. So what is the most, first let's look at the less formal versions. The first one is, you see someone, you would say hello, hi, and if it's a very close friend, you would say hey. So these are the normal words in which you start off a conversation informally. You see a person, and this is commonplace. This is how all of us greet our friends. Now, on the other hand, when we are going on to a more formal expression, formal greetings as we call it, we refer to them, they are mainly used when the situation is not actually a friendly chat, but imagine you are meeting your manager, or there is someone, it's a more official kind of a scenario, it is more formal. So then you can't say hi, hello and hey, that would be very, very inappropriate. So here we use words like good morning, depending on the time of the day, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. But be careful, when do we use good night? We say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Commonplace, we all know how we use it. Good night is often used when you are ending, when you are leaving. Imagine you had a group of office mates together, you had a party. So, all of you had the dinner, or you had the party, you had the dinner. Once it's over, when you meet them first in the evening, you would say good evening. But once the dinner is over and you're all going to part ways, ningal pona samayamba, you say good night. Okay, so that's how we normally have a formal greeting. So we have informal and formal. Now let's go on to the next bit, which is introducing people. So that's what happens is, first you greet, then you perhaps introduce people. For example, a very informal way, you've seen someone somewhere before, but you don't really remember that person's name, and you want to convey that to the person you've met. That the line we use is, you see the person, you know you've met before, you know the name, but you can't remember. So the informal way of expressing that is, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. You are? That's how you would say when you want to say it very informally. On the other hand, if you want to say that formally, you would say, please, you have a friend with you and you want to introduce your friend, you would say, please meet John, or please meet Mr. John, he works with me, or he is my co-worker, he is my colleague. And we can also say the same thing like this is. Like we say, please meet. Another common expression is, hi Jim, this is John, he is my friend, or he is my friend from work. So this is how we introduce another person. Okay. Now after we introduce the person, how do you think the other person would respond to your introduction? When you've introduced your friend to another person, the general way in which you respond to the introduction is, nice to meet you. Okay. One way we say it is, nice to meet you. Okay. Or you would say, pleasure to meet you. It's a pleasure. So this is how you respond. So when you have a scenario where you meet a person, so I'm sure you are aware how we go about it. We start off with first addressing the person. If it's informal, hello, hi. If it's formal, depending on the time of the day, good morning or good evening. And then you have to introduce the person. This is, let me introduce, this is, okay. And then you go on to telling the person, nice to meet you, it's pleasure to meet you, or it's a pleasure. Okay. So here, this is just the first bit. In the coming episodes, I will be covering it. I'll be covering the body of a conversation, how you can think of topics, how you can converse with different contexts. Here I've only begun with the first bit, which is how you introduce. Okay. So this is the new format of our program, and I suppose you enjoyed it, and I'm sure you have a lot of takeaways that you can have from this program. So until we see you next time, thank you and goodbye.